Have you ever watched your phone ring and felt your chest tighten for no clear reason? It is just a call, not an emergency, not danger, and yet your body reacts like it is being summoned to something you did not agree to. You let it ring. Maybe you stare at the screen hoping it stops. Maybe you text instead. Can we just message? Maybe you promise yourself you will call back later and never do. If that is you, you are not rude, you are not cold, and you are definitely not alone. But here is the strange part. The fear is rarely about the person calling. It is about something much deeper. Because hating phone calls is not really about sound. It is about psychology. And once you understand what is happening beneath the surface, you will never look at that ringing screen the same way again. Most people assume that disliking phone calls is just a preference. Some people like talking, some prefer texting, end of story. But psychology tells us something different. When your phone rings, it creates what psychologists call an immediate demand response. There is no buffer, no space, no time to prepare your identity. A text message lets you think, edit, rewrite, control. A call does not. A call says, respond now, in real time, with your real voice. And for many people, that feels like exposure. There is a concept in psychology called impression management. It describes how we carefully shape how others see us. When we text, we are in control of that image. We can choose the perfect words. We can delete what sounds awkward. We can delay until we feel composed. But during a call, there is no edit button. Your pauses are heard. Your uncertainty is audible. Your mood cannot be filtered. For people who are highly self-aware, sensitive to social evaluation, or naturally introspective, this can feel overwhelming, not because they are incapable, but because they think deeply. And deep thinkers tend to rehearse before they speak. Here is something else most people never notice. A phone call removes visual context. When you talk face-to-face, you read body language, you adjust based on subtle cues, a smile, a nod, a shift in posture. These signals calm your nervous system. On a call, those cues disappear. Your brain has to fill in the blanks. And the human brain is not always optimistic when filling in blanks. Psychologists call this negative interpretation bias. When we lack information, we often imagine the worst. Is their silence awkward? Are they annoyed? Did I say something strange? That tiny uncertainty can quietly activate stress. There is also the issue of control. Texts are asynchronous, calls are synchronous. In other words, texting happens on your time. Calling happens on shared time. For people who value autonomy, independence, or mental space, an unexpected call can feel like an intrusion into their carefully managed world. It interrupts the rhythm of thought, and some people guard their mental rhythm like it is sacred. But here is the part that might surprise you. Many people who hate phone calls are not antisocial. They are actually deeply thoughtful. They prefer conversations with intention, with presence, with emotional safety. A random ringing phone does not promise depth. It promises unpredictability. And unpredictability makes the brain alert. If you have ever felt your heart beat faster when your phone lights up, you are not dramatic. Your nervous system is simply reacting to uncertainty. But that is only part of the story. Because there is another layer most people never talk about, and it explains why even calling someone you love can sometimes feel exhausting. And that layer has everything to do with energy. There is a quiet truth many people do not admit. Phone calls are intense, not loud, not dramatic, just intense in a subtle, draining way. When you are on a call, your brain works harder than you realize. Studies in cognitive psychology show that when visual information is removed, the brain increases its effort to interpret tone, Pauses, breathing patterns, and subtle vocal shifts. It is constantly decoding. You are not just listening to words, you are analyzing rhythm, emotion, silence, and all of that happens in real time. For someone who is already mentally busy, already carrying a full inner world, that extra layer of processing can feel exhausting. This is especially true for introverted personalities. Contrary to popular belief, introversion is not about disliking people. It is about how energy is managed. Introverts tend to recharge alone and expend energy during social interaction. A phone call offers no physical cues to anchor the conversation, no shared environment, just two nervous systems meeting through sound. It can feel like standing in a spotlight with no script. And here is something deeply human. Many people who dislike phone calls are highly empathetic. Empathy is beautiful, but it is also demanding. When you are empathetic, you subconsciously absorb emotional tones. You mirror stress, you adjust to subtle changes. Over time, that emotional mirroring becomes tiring. A simple 5-minute call can feel like 30. But there is another reason that runs even deeper. Control over timing is tied to emotional safety. Text messages allow boundaries without confrontation. You can reply when ready, you can step away, you can pause the interaction without awkwardness. A phone call removes that buffer. You cannot easily escape without explanation. You cannot think in silence without it being noticed. You cannot compose yourself without the other person sensing the gap. For people who grew up needing to carefully manage their reactions or who learn to be cautious with their words, this immediacy can feel vulnerable. And vulnerability without preparation feels unsafe. So the brain does what it is designed to do. It avoids, not because the person is weak, but because the brain prioritizes stability. There is also something quietly symbolic about a ringing phone. It demands attention, and in a world where attention is constantly pulled in 100 directions, some people feel protective of their focus. They treat their attention like something precious. When the phone rings, it feels like someone knocking on the door of their mind, and sometimes they simply do not want to open it. But here is where it becomes even more interesting. Avoiding phone calls is rarely about the call itself. It is about identity. Some people feel more articulate in writing, more authentic in carefully chosen words. Texting allows depth without pressure. It allows honesty without interruption. On a call, thoughts can stumble, words can overlap, silence can stretch. For someone who holds themselves to high internal standards, that imperfection feels uncomfortable. And yet, here is the quiet irony. The same people who avoid phone calls often crave meaningful connection. They want depth. They want understanding. They want to feel heard. They just want it on terms that feel safe. So what does this mean? It means if you hate phone calls, you are not broken. Your brain may simply value clarity, autonomy, and emotional regulation. But there is a gentle question hidden beneath all of this. At what point does protection turn into isolation? Because sometimes the thing we avoid to preserve our energy slowly reduces our opportunities for spontaneous warmth. And sometimes growth lives on the other side of mild discomfort, not overwhelming fear, not force, just small, intentional steps. Maybe answering one call, maybe initiating one when you feel ready, maybe reminding yourself that imperfect words are still human. The phone ringing is not a threat. It is an invitation. And you are allowed to choose how often you accept it. But maybe, just maybe, the next time it lights up, instead of seeing it as pressure, you can see it as a moment of unscripted connection. Not flawless, not rehearsed, just real. And sometimes real is enough.